Good morning everyone, or afternoon or evening. This is going to be the final video in this sort of series of lighting and colouring and drawing the face. Probably move on to Maya after this. I just wanted to start off, this is only going to be very quick, this first bit. This drawing I did last time, I've already improved since then, but just wanted to show you a time lapse of basically trying to get it a little bit more realistic. So I scanned in the drawing, I lightened it up, then stuck a new layer on it, and then just started to work into it. And the way I was working with this is, if you can ever see my layer palette here to the left, you'll notice layers arrive and then disappear. And what I'll do with this is whenever I'm doing a new piece, I'd make a new layer with either multiply or normal. For instance, if I wanted this shadow on here, I'll put a new layer on, draw the shadow in, then I could use the smudge tool, move it around, stuff like that, without affecting anything underneath, and then basically I'd flatten it each time, because it's just the way I work. I don't like to have thousands of layers, so it's just the process of doing a bit, flattening it, and carrying on. I used a little bit of reference, you might be able to see in the left hand corner, but this is, I'd say, about 80% just from the imagination and just using those techniques we were learning before. The only major stuff I did to this, I do some liquefying in a little while just to sort out the shape of this face because it was a little bit off, but we're not talking massive changes, so it's still using the principles of the Loomis technique. Added a bit of light. It's nice the paper texture is still showing through this, which is good because a lot of digital paintings can look quite oily after a while. Adding in some more lights. You know, it looks okay. It's not amazing. I just need more practice, like we all do. But anyway, we're going to move on, and we're going to look at this guy, John Hurt, famous actor. When I got my XP Pen 15, and I also borrowed the Cintiq from college, this was just a test piece, just to see, you know, what it's like to work with it, working with lots of subtle tone and stuff like that. So we're going to try and colour this, and like I said before, this isn't really the way I work, but after doing this, it's quite a good technique really. So what we need to do is first of all make a sort of skin colour palette. Now you can go into this and make your own skin tone if you want, there's no problem with doing that. So we start from, I'll put a little bit more red in that, there we go. If you remember that lesson we did on highlights and shadows, remember it followed this type of weird curve. So the light colour is not very saturated. So if we go this way it becomes more saturated. This way it becomes less saturated. So the highlights are desaturated, midtones become more saturated, and then again the shadows become less saturated. So you can do that and pick a sort of range of colour within this sort of like curve, and it'll work pretty well. For this though, I'm just going to nick some colour from this photograph of John Hurt. So all we need to do is pick a highlight colour, a sort of mid-tone, which will, steal from there, and a shadow. Now I've done this before with 5 different colours, but it actually works better if you've only got 3 or 4. Right, so we need to get this colour onto here. And the way we do that is by using something called a gradient map. They're very simple to use. So first of all, we need to make a gradient out of these colours. So I'll go onto our gradients, click on them. I've been making loads of weird ones here. Right, we'll make a brand new one. Look at them all stacked up here. So we need to get these colours onto here. So we click on this colour. This is going to be our highlight. Click on the middle one. It's only changing a little bit because I've already done a practice one of this. Click on our shadow, one there. Right, we can alter this. Obviously, we can determine exactly where and when it mixes. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to add a tiny bit of a highlight with a little bit of yellow in it as well. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to probably steal. Let's steal that. Click on colour, and I'm just going to brighten it up just a little bit. So I just need to move a little bit more towards the white and a little bit more towards the yellow. There we go, that should help it. Right, we like that, so we're going to call it something. Click new, and we'll call it Painful, as he's called John Hurt. Hopefully that'll work. Click OK. Right, I've duplicated I'll get rid of John Hurt now. I've duplicated this face because this one we need to use as an original. In fact, original, let's name it. This one is called the gradient map, because this needs to blend with this one. If you have it without, then it's not going to work properly. So let's go on gradient map, and to access the gradient map you go to Image, Adjustments, Gradient Map, and it'll look through your gradients you've got on your computer and it'll say, right, well, which gradient do you want to use. So if we click on here, if I scroll all the way down, I'm on the latest version of Photoshop, so it puts everything in folders now. This should be it. It's called Custom. It's not called Hurty or Pain, or whatever it is I called it. Never mind. Click on that. That's one we want to use. Right. Does this look good? No, it doesn't, because it's reversed it. So if we click reverse, we suddenly get something a lot better. So the way a gradient map works is the darkest point of a black and white image is represented by this colour, right? The lightest point is represented by this colour, and the midtones by this. So we could, if we wanted to, click on this, and now what it's doing, again that should be reversed, but let's see if we can get on something else. It's basically substituting all the light areas and the dark areas. I wonder if we can reverse this. It doesn't matter. Boom. Right, see, we can change this colour to dark green, and we've got white to dark green. We can go on to this one. We can change this to light blue if we want. See, so it's going, anything that's white is going to now be blue, anything that's dark and shadows is going to be green. And that's how it works. It's really straightforward. Anyway, let's load up that one. So, are we happy with this? Well, what we can do is we can mess around a little bit with exactly where these colours cross over. You want to get a decent range. That's not bad at all, really. So we're happy with that. We can click OK. Now what we need to do is we need to blend this with the colour underneath, and the best blending mode to use is actually one called colour, because it ignores everything else and just puts the colour over the top. You can also use things like soft light and overlay, but you see overlay bleaches it out a little bit. Soft light's okay, it's a little bit subtle, so you just need to go through. A lot of this is just done by eye. What we will do though is back this off quite a bit, because we don't want to be hitting you in the face with colour. In fact, you're best starting off from black and white and just ramping it up until you get to a point where you go, yep, that's alright, because otherwise it just starts looking weird and fake. What we can do first of all is put a layer mask on it. Now remember, with layer masks you're either hiding or showing the layer underneath. What I'm going to do for this is just get rid of the colour that's in his irises. Not his irises, the whites of his eyes, whatever those are called. The white bits. See, that already looks a little bit more convincing. But we need to individually start changing the colours in different areas. And I'll show you this. I should have a picture somewhere. Yeah, face map. People use these. They're really good actually. It just shows you the general coloration of the face. So, you know, yellow is more on the forehead. This central area is red, obviously, because your nose, like the capillaries and things like that, especially when it gets cold, it gets redder. And then with the male face, it gets more teal or bluish green, and that's usually because you have stubble there, and it just gives a green cast. So what we'll do, make a new layer, and we'll broadly put in these colours. And what I'm going to do, this is going to look ridiculous, but I'm going to put them in extremely brightly. I'm going to blur that. So I'll go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and just, you want to blur it out a little bit, but not go insane with it. That'll do. Again, we need to choose a different blending mode. We'll try colour. That's not bad. Overlay, soft light. We'll use soft light for this. But obviously it's way too overpowered. So I'm going to take it right down to 0, and I'm just going to let it creep in. You can already see, do you know what, that is about enough. That's 13% fill on that. And look, if I turn it on and off, you can actually see the difference. It's extremely subtle. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to blend out a little bit more of this red because it's a little bit too harsh. Okay, we're not done yet. We're getting there though. I'll add a new layer. Now, because skin's luminous and full of blood and stuff like that, a good trick to use is any area where it starts sort of changing from light to dark, we can actually start to put in on this sort of division line, we can start to fill this with red because it's just the way the light reacts to the blood. Again, this is going to be faded back into it, and I'm doing this really quickly because I don't want to take up all day doing it. A bit on there. We'll put a little bit more on the nose. Okay, and again we'll try this with colour. Looks like it's on fire, but again we're going to take it right down to 0 and just start bringing it in. And that just gives the face a little bit more warmth and believability. Okay, we'll do another layer. We'll put in some areas like the red areas around the eyes. Do you know what? We'll colour his eyes as well. I'm not sure. I don't think he's got blue eyes, but yeah, why not? We'll give him blue eyes. Blue, blue, blue. We can put a little bit more colour in the lips as well. If you're not 100% sure about how these are going to blend, and I'm not actually doing this, you can always do a separate layer for the lips, separate layer for this, that, the other, and then blend them in at the end, so you've got a lot more control over them. Okay, let's give this a go. So, I'm just going to go through them. See, overlay's pretty good. Soft light is better. Let's go back to colour. Yeah, colour's still good. But obviously we have areas here which are a bit too much. So for instance, these eye bits I'm going to blur out a little bit with using the smudge tool. Put a little bit of red just creeping into the corner of the eyes, because you get that, especially if you're old like this guy. I'm going to knock back these lips because they look ridiculous. But it's almost, the whole technique with this is almost just going too far with it and then ramping it back and then getting it to the point where you barely even see it. So how are we doing with this? It doesn't look too bad. Let's just go back onto this layer and see what happens if we put the opacity up a little bit. Yeah, so we're getting more of that sort of flesh tone coming through. And also I'm gonna back off a tiny little bit with this yellow colour here. Right, so we've got that now. We've got a coloured picture. My final part is to go right to the top layer and add an adjustment layer, which will I can basically knock down all the colour globally in one fell swoop. So if I click on this and make an adjustment layer, and I go on to hue and saturation, this adjustment layer will affect everything there. So if I want to tweak anything, so I'll probably want to take the saturation down a little bit. So you can go right the way back to black and white, or we can go middle of the lava field. Just bringing it up enough, and that isn't too bad. So it's it's worth practicing. So that's what it looks like in black and white, and that's what it looks like colorized. So it's quite subtle. You've got nice little variations of color. You could go back. We'll put one more final layer on this, and let's add a bit more sort of greenish blue to the stubble. Let's just see what this looks like. Go on to color, knock it back to 0, and then just let it creep in just a tiny bit. Right, see? You can really see that coming in. I mean, we're talking, what's 8% of colour. But I'm just going to toggle it on and off and you should be able to see the difference. So there you go. If you are more of a sort of black and white person but you want to explore colour, this is actually a really good method to use, and you can get away from that rubbishy sort of colorized photocopy thing where it looks like you've just put watercolour over a photocopy. Okay, this is the final bit now. The previous digital painting was a lot more accurate and detailed, so let's see what this looks like when it's a bit more stylized. So we've got a gradient map which I made. The next layer is the red areas between the boundaries of these shadows. Then you've got the face mapping with the different colours, the yellow and the red and the blue for the main zones of the face. We've got blue for the irises. We have a little bit more red put into the nose. We have the tear ducts and around here. Again, really subtle, but it is there. We have the hair. And then finally, we've got the adjustment layer just to bring the colour back so it's not too crazy. So we've gone from nothing, just like a sketch from the imagination, to something which is coloured and looks reasonably convincing. So thanks for watching. See you later.